part two of my house design and thoughts on construction and materials here in Thailand. So let's talk a little bit about the building materials I want to use. So, watching the time a little bit here, I'm going to pick up my wife's voice. I can see I'm not going to make it through much of this. So for the roof, they do steel panel roofs, corrugated steel roofs. I'm a big corrugated steel fan. It's a fantastic material. It's maintenance free. It's efficient. It's inexpensive. It's easy and fast to use. We should be using more of it in the States, in my opinion. And you can make it look very high class and a nice structure. I've seen million-dollar, multi-million-dollar homes done with it. I have. And they can look very cool. And they can look like $1 million. Anyway, but they also here sell a insulated steel panel. They had some earlier versions which weren't very successful. Right now I've seen two companies here in Nansung using a isocyanate foam. I've heard sometimes referred to as isonine, but it'll be a two-part polyurethane foam that will be bonded to the underside of the steel, and then there's like a little black thin plastic, like a mylar layer, bonded to the outside facing of that. So from inside your home, you look up, it's a blacked out ceiling. And then the top of your roof, I would pick white or a galvanized silver. I would not do a dark color. When I see colored roofs, I'm just thinking, why did you do that? You want a very light color to reflect as much heat as possible. And then for the exterior perimeter of the home, I want to use AAC block, which is aerated autoclaved concrete. I am a huge AAC fan. I think it's one of the most clever materials. Why have you maybe not heard of it? It didn't catch on in the United States? Because it's not transportable. It's such an inexpensive material. You're competing with concrete block, which is literally dirt cheap. Literally dirt cheap. To ship it anywhere is unfeasible under any kind of economic, efficacious manner. There's just, you touch it, look at it wrong, you've put cost into it, now you can't sell it for a profit. So it's a material that sort of screws itself, unfortunately. So AAC was a big rage. Everybody got very excited about it. There'll be reasons why in a second, and it doesn't make money. Here, they work around it, they work with it, and they've made it work somehow. I don't know what the economics of it here are. I don't care. But it's available, it's at a reasonable cost, I can use it to build a home. So AAC, what it is, think about it as the hybrid between concrete and styrofoam. That's exactly what it is. It's a very highly foamed concrete, and you can take an old-fashioned carpenter saw, like from a Wile E. Coyote cartoon, and you can cut it. You can cut it with a wood saw. You can drive a nail into it. You can run a screw gun and a screw into it. It will hold a nail or a screw, but yet it's still concrete, so it's got some strength to it. It's not going to be as strong as solid concrete, not nearly, and it's not going to be as strong as hollow concrete block even, but it's going to be strong enough to build a wall for a house. Could you make a high-rise out of it? No. As a weight bearing? No. But you can use it for walls in a one-story building, no problem. And maybe more, but I don't care. I'm building a one-story house. So I want to use that. And by using the insulating factors of the concrete block, one, why would you use this versus wood or steel studs with insulation in there or something? It's the termites and the bugs. The insects here run amok because there's no winter to kill them. And the insects can be a real problem here. There's termites. There's some kind of really nasty termite here. They eat everything. And I think maybe not teak, but everything but teak they eat. It's like some kind of dang atomic termite here. I know it's a real problem for them. And so they don't eat concrete. And by also a concrete that insulates, it's not going to sweat. When the weather changes, you're not going to get the rotting. Concrete can rot. Believe it or not, it is not everything. Proof that concrete is not an impervious material. It can have problems similar to wood, just on a slower schedule. And I've seen a lot of damaged concrete here that was very poorly done. This would be more resistant to that. And the insulating is going to make it cooler. With an insulated roof and the foamed concrete walls, now you've got just enough of an R value so your air conditioner isn't running all the time. So you can, on certain days and nights, which is critical, open up the windows with the screens. I want to have screens in my windows, which is another luxury most Thais don't have. I cannot deal with insects and mosquitoes biting me while I'm trying to sleep. I like it simple, but not that simple. So you get the idea. You can do all that, and that's all very simple and cheap. And another I'll take a break here in a second, and then we'll have to get back to this. But the other really odd thing they do here is then they pour these house foundations. All the land around here, not all, but almost all virtually is filled. And they typically fill it about 1 meter or 2 high in elevation. And this is for flooding. Flooding in Thailand is very wide and diffuse and dispersed everywhere, but it's not very deep. And so typically they'll build a house or a store or whatever they're building, and they'll raise the land 1 meter or maybe 2 typically, and that's all that's necessary so the water goes elsewhere and they're not flooded. And that's great, but then that's filled soil. They realize that and the standard here is they wait 2, sometimes 3 rainy seasons to percolate that soil down and compact it, which is fairly efficacious. That works pretty well most of the time. But you got to wait 3 years, which sometimes they don't want to wait. And then 2, they typically don't compact it. They just dump it and then let the rain perk through it and sort of semi-compact it. The idea, when we fill soil in the U.S., we do it in lifts. We do typically 3-inch, 6-inch, never more than a 12-inch lift at a time. We have very heavy, very powerful equipment that I haven't seen here. Vibrate and compact that into place. And you can, I did this for a barn for myself one time. I went crazy and built this crazy barn one time for myself. And we can pack that to where it's essentially virgin soil. It won't settle at all. I had a 64-foot long 6-car garage barn, and I did not have not one crack in my entire floor 5-10 years later. The guys that did that did a phenomenal job. I hired good people. I had great skill. Don't have access to that skill level here. Don't have it. Don't want to try and manage it. Not interested. So what they do is they'll typically drill through and put concrete pilings, then put the slab on top of that, block it all together with some wire mesh or bar, maybe. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. I don't know that all the crews understand how that should be done. I've seen it both ways. I've seen some construction that's not bad, and I've seen some that's just really cringy, and that's just the way it is. And I've seen that in the States. But anyway, so I don't want to go through all that inconvenience, expense, managing all that. What I want to do is do a raft foundation or a floating foundation. And you know who was a big fan of floating foundations? That crackpot. What was his name? Oh yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright. I'm a big Frank Lloyd Wright fan, and he had a very clever floating foundation design that, as far as I know, had no problems. I'm extremely comfortable betting my money on this type of a simpler design, actually, the crude version of that for myself here. And essentially, it's just a good quality 4-inch concrete slab that's reinforced at the perimeter with some rebar, and then all across it with some wire mesh. And all that does is, if it does crack, which it probably will, the wire mesh just holds it together. So it's got a crack, who cares? It's got a crack, it's all still in one piece. And really, it's a non-issue if it does crack. And that's something they don't do here, but I'm completely comfortable with that. The easiest way is to just pour a 4-inch slab, the size I need, or a hair bigger, and then just drill and tap on steel columns, and then put in the concrete block, the foam concrete block between the columns, and make the walls. A column in each corner, and probably it'll be a rectangular structure, so probably 1 column extra in the middle point of the 2 longer walls. There'll be 2 short walls, 2 long walls, and I think we're talking, it was not a very big house. It was, I think, 8 or 9 meters long, and I think 6 meters wide. It's not a very big place. I'll put some. I got drawings all photoed, and I'll put those in, and then I'll narrate the photos as I put them in. So this is just sort of the overview. So I'll be decidedly less vague throughout this whole video, but you get the idea. And so with a floating foundation, if it does settle, who cares? If your house is 1 inch or 2 taller or shorter, you can't tell. Settling is only bad in a particularly a residential structure if it's differential settling. This side settles and this side doesn't. That's a problem. If the whole structure settled exactly 3/4 of an inch evenly, you have 0.0% problems, my friend. You have truly not one problem. And that's what I'm looking at. All I'd have to do is put the waste piping up underneath first, and waste piping is going to be for a bathroom. It's going to have a spur line over towards the laundry area and another spur line over towards the kitchen area, and then one ultimate 4-inch pipe going out, and then that will go to wherever, whatever tank, underground tank that I'll buy or whatever, probably cut the bottom out or drill holes through it and it'll perk into the ground. A lot of the Thai soil perks very well. And there's a lot of people say a lot of bad things about the soil here and stuff relative to building, but it's honestly not that bad. Again, for light residential loads, sandy clay, if it's more sand and less clay, which is what my Thai wife has and what I see all around where we live in Monsoon, is a phenomenal building material. Again, for light loads. Can't build a high rise on it, but for light residential loads, it's like ideal. It's like the best you could hope for. So this way we're kind of like trying to ice skate downhill versus ice skate uphill. Going with the strengths, the literal and figurative strengths of the soil and what's available here, and versus trying to build some giant monument to my ego, which I'm sure is plenty big. And a lot of those guys that build those big houses end up not living in them down the road and end up pretty unhappy, and I just don't want to see that. I don't want to tie up a lot of my money into something like that may or may not make me happy long term. And I'm a simple guy. It doesn't take a lot to make me happy. So why go through all that, those mental gymnastics and that anguish? Why do that? Why risk some of my retirement savings that I need for my adult son with autism later on down the road, depending on what help he might need? So I need to take it easy on what I'm doing because I need to have a good, strong reserve in case something with him happens, because that's a real possibility. So anyway, so that's all that, and that's kind of my overview. And I got my list of materials here. We'll run through that next time. I probably got to go, and man, this room is really hot. I'd be curious to have a thermometer in here. It's got to be close to 100, and it's got a little bit of humidity left in the air because we had some near rain a couple days ago. And when we get a little rain, we'll get humidity, which is rare here, thank God. Anyway, so I'll get more on this later. That's kind of a general overview to the concept of building a small, efficient, simple house, going with the available materials and skill level that's proximate to me where I live. This will be a house I can build with farm labor, with simple labor. There's a contractor here at this school, this very building where I'm at, that did some small construction, did a nice job. And I'll go through, they made an offer to do some construction, and it was rather accurate, actually. It'll have a laugh, but they're not dumb. And it was a good offer, and we could end up taking them up on it. All right, later. No, thank you for supporting my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.